Hey folks, Steve here with the video for 1918-1919 Storm in the West. Now, if you've watched the channel for long enough, and that would be meaning over a year, you'll know that I've been tracking this game for a while, and we are one step closer to seeing the game in person. And the saga of this game goes back, like I said, over a year ago when this game was first put on the P500. It was an item that originally wasn't doing great in terms of the pre-orders and reaching 500. It is a game by Ted Racer, and I like Ted Racer games, sure do. At least the ones I've played, anyway. And Ted Racer has designed many World War I games. This is one of them. It was originally a magazine game. I forget the exact magazine that it was published in. I think down here, XTR, Command, something like that. XTR is what's being referenced here. And it is a World War I game that takes place in 1918 and also 1919, which I'll talk about in a second. Storm in the West, so all about the final offensives in the Western Front. So this being sort of like a reprint, a redo, there was a new map done. You can come out here to the GMT Games website, go to the product page and check it out, read into it. Plenty of good information out here. Map stuff to look at if you like that. And what ended up happening was that it wasn't doing so great in the P500, and then in the monthly newsletter for GMT Games, they basically had put a couple of games on the chopping block to say, they weren't doing very well, and unless something changed, they would be removed, and the game would kind of go into limbo state. Now, I am not going to say that anything I did helped, because I really don't know. I don't have the numbers, and there's no way to know. But I was trying to create some videos back then, trying to get support for this game and to get people to pre-order. And the price point, of course, is very cheap. $30, that's not much, right? P500 price, $30, that's cheap in terms of war game price to get people to pre-order. And over time, it was sort of put in that red zone of maybe being cut. Eventually, it got enough orders, not quite 500, but it increased enough that it avoided being cut. And I guess GMT had just decided at that point that they were going to go ahead and print it anyway, even though it didn't have 500. It had like 470 something, that they were going to do it. And now since then, the orders to date are over 500, almost 600 in fact, so you can be lucky number 600 if you're watching this video now. So it's good to go. It's going to be released, and in fact, the status as of today, October 12th, 2020, is charging. So if you've pre-ordered the game, you've probably been charged $30 plus shipping and handling or whatever, and the game's going to come to you. Now, the whole reason I'm making this video is to give that general update, of course. But the other important thing that was posted the other day, and I sort of missed it until today, is that there's some formatting of the web page that's a little goofy, but they have the final rules posted, not the playbook necessarily, assuming that it is going to get one, and I believe it will, or maybe it won't. Maybe it's just a rules booklet. I'm not sure. So we're going to take a closer look because we're going to look at the PDF. Oh, here it is. 1918, 1919, Storm in the West. So for context, the 1918 part of it is, yes, it is there's a scenario for 1918, and then there's also a scenario for 1919. Sort of a alternate history, what-if situation, and it looks like all the scenario information is in the rulebook across a few pages, so there you go. Now, the only thing I've done in terms of looking at this was I did look at the designer's notes in this D-elim section. I haven't looked at anything else, so I read the designer's notes because I was curious. It's only like a page long. The D-elim, so let me just jump down. So designer's notes, looking all good, looking great, good stuff. And then the D-elim is evidently the strategy stuff, and apparently that really didn't get I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. This looks like an error. This is a typo. So there's one bit of errata, non-consequential at all. I don't really, and I've not looked at anything else in the rulebook to see if there's any other possible errata. I wouldn't know yet, but so you got a couple of, bits here, quick stuff, easy stuff, and then you can see, the credit stuff, all goodness, nice. There's some index stuff. You got your turn sequence, and if we were looking at the game, say, okay, there's a German turn. And the Allied turn, and sometimes the other player starts. You got initial supply phase. Both sides will have something like that. We're gonna, get some weather. The Allies are gonna do strategic bombing. Germans are gonna check supply, get reinforcement or replacements rather. Strategic movement, regular movement, first combat, infiltration movement, which will come into play with the stormtroopers and other things. Second combat phase, and then terminal supply phase. And the Allied side, as you can see, very, very similar. And so this is sort of your bread and butter hex and counter, I go, you go kind of situation. This is not a Ted Racer game with chit pull that I can tell. And I like the chit pull, but it's just a different sort of game. And so you can see here, when we're talking about the rules of the game, the forward... the rules proper start on page 2, which is the second page of the. This is page 1, effectively. We're really only talking about like 16 pages of rules. 16, 17, 18 pages of rules. Not much, right? And then you have the scenarios, which is mostly setup stuff. But nothing too crazy. And if we look at what the rules are looking at, are looking like, introduction, typical stuff, talking about the game components, setup and hex control. Morale and winning. Okay, how do you win the game? What is the turn sequence? And then you can see everything else is teaching you basically the rules of the game, almost in sequence of play order. Obviously, there's some, it's not exact, but it's close. So we can read about the weather. What does the weather do? Supply, replacements, reinforcements, stacking rules, zones of control, strategic movement, regular movement, combat. The cool stuff, right? Tanks, artillery, air units, the infiltration movement, and then optional rules, which I suspect will have to do with how much more historical fidelity do you want. Twist some knobs, pull some levers, that kind of thing. It looks like the rulebook is going to have full color and is in the basic 2-column format, as you would expect. I'm not going to read the rulebook to you. This isn't meant to be a very long video. But I do just want to talk to, it's talking about what the game is, the scale, all good stuff, the components. So the two-sided map, so it is a paper map, two-sided. I believe it's a paper map. I don't believe this is mounted. 2 sheets of die-cut counters, 1 rules of play manual, some dice, and 2 player aid cards. And I will see the player aid cards when we get the game, I guess. I have not seen a picture of those. Game map, pretty standard description stuff, and then we get into talking about the counters. Now you can see they have a little guide for understanding what the shortened abbreviations are on the historical identifiers on counters. You can see they show the example. There's Belgian units using a blue, green on blue setup, British, French, U.S., all using colors that I guess are not to be unexpected, right? This is kind of what you would normally see. They do have that the British units have a different inset color for their allies and constituent countries of the British Commonwealth. So you've got Australian, Canadian, Portuguese, and then, Portuguese aren't part of the Commonwealth. You know what I mean. Allies have allies. There you go. And you can see, this is a standard hex and counter, right? I mean, attack factor, defense factor, movement points, all really basic, straightforward stuff. The unit sizes, they're talking about the corps. The Americans had divisions because they had very large divisions in World War I. So there's this whole thing about firepower, needing to understand that it's not that, a French division isn't like as good man-to-man as an American division. It's that the U.S. divisions are just more men than other allied divisions, and so they rate. If you're playing a core level game, the U.S. divisions need to be represented as their own counters because they're just so big, right? That's sort of a thing to know about World War I at this time. You have the air units that are really just sort of like bonus chits, probably similar to some other Ted Racer games. And there's some design notes. That's always good to see. I always like that. And then you can see, I mean, a lot of this stuff, as I'm just scrolling through, I mean, every rule section is about a paragraph. Winning the game is a paragraph. Turn morale check is a paragraph. Every individual rule is not some big, crazy, rule section that you need to chew up. It looks like everything is pretty straightforward. Even the weather, I mean, you're really talking about a couple of paragraphs. It's going to act like you would expect. It's going to be wet or dry, which makes that easy, right? It's only 2 types of weather. Okay. Supply, I suspect the supply rules are going to be pretty straightforward. It does look like there's some nuances to where units get supply, which is interesting. Fortress supply, probably not going to be too surprising there. Most World War I fortress supply rules are pretty straightforward. Replacements and reinforcements, again, maybe a paragraph per rule itself. I don't see anything that's going to be too crazy. Some stacking limits. As long as the 3 units per hex limit is observed, there you go. Okay, 3 units per hex is by and large what's going to be the limit. Boom, that's easy. And they tackle some other interesting aspects of it. But Zox and Ezox, probably straightforward stuff. Again, about a paragraph per rule. Strategic movement, it's going to be pretty straightforward stuff, I expect. Regular movement. All this stuff is going to be pretty straightforward. And then the combat, which should be straightforward. But we've got to see those combat charts and the player aid chart to really understand this a little bit better. It does look like there are some... This looks like an example of play situation. Oh, okay, concentric attack. That's common in a lot of World War I games that I've seen where if you have the right Zoc set up, that is worse for the defender, so you want to surround guys wherever possible. That makes sense. Fortress combat. So it looks like there's some nuance here that folks have to keep in mind. You get into the specialty units, which are going to probably act much like you would expect. And I realize if you're a newbie and you don't know, I'm probably not saying anything very helpful. But if you're used to World War I games, this is going to be, it is exactly what it is on the tin, basically, right? Air units, the infiltration movement, which is going to be the World War I version of like Blitz, basically, where they can move, they can make it sort of a secondary move, but only certain units can do it. It's going to be your stormtroopers, your I'm not even going to try. My mouth can't do German today. Stoßtruppen, and tank units and so on are going to be able to do those types of things. You see Allied tank-led infiltration. And then the optional rules, so interesting, they talk about Australian American Corps. Ooh, influenza, I'm playing with that role for sure, given the circumstances. Weak trenches, Belgian demoralization, Allied naval evacuation, Big Bertha, oh, you gotta play with Big Bertha, come on. Attack casualties, super high odds attacks, historical weather, that might be interesting, and Paris gun. Well, these things, we should play with the optionals. They look cool. And then we get into the scenarios. Some good picture here. Here's your 1918 scenario, I guess, or this looks like an additional one. I'm not. The storm elsewhere, an optional scenario. I'm not sure what this is exactly. set up as in the however the Germans set up first and Strasbourg units are replaced by the regular infantry counterpart units. I'm not sure what the point of this scenario. You have to read this, and I'm gonna skip past it for now. Here's a short campaign, and then here's your 1919 scenario. I'm kind of wondering. I'm a little concerned. There's a bunch of extra rules for 1919, which is fine. I'm a little concerned because I don't see. It is unclear to me what the 1918 scenario is just by default. So are we missing that? Is the setup for it says additional scenarios? Maybe I missed something here. Oh, setup. Okay, okay. Yeah, okay. I got ahead of myself here. Boom, there you go. This is the regular scenario is set up right here, or at least the instructions to set up are right there. So, yeah, okay. There's a standard setup, and then there's the additional scenarios. Not just scenarios; these are additional scenarios. So, a alternate 1918, a short 1918, and then the 1919 scenario. So really, you really have 4 scenarios basically that you could opt to play. Okay, well I think that's all I wanted to do. Just wanted to take it's a preview, right? This is a preview of the game. You can look at the map, you can read the rules, you can kind of put some guesswork on the way the game's going to flow with this, and we will see what happens when the game comes out. When I get my copy, I will do an unboxing video, and I will do a playthrough video just as soon as I feel confident enough to run through the game on camera for you guys. So, looking forward to it. I enjoy Ted's games. This will be a fun one to try. So, yeah, it'll be good stuff. We'll see you in that one, guys, when the time comes. And in the meantime, take care. Keep on gaming.